So knight f3, my new favorite move, instead of e4 first for the King's Indian attack. And we get knight f6. Are we going to get a King's Indian attack versus defense? Maybe we will. And if we do, how do we play it? Do we play it with e4? Not e4 now, but like d3, e4? Or do we play it with c4 and try to go for like a Benoni type of structure? We can play d3 no matter what, and we can decide after, which is nice. I'm kind of liking the idea of playing c4 actually, and trying to take advantage of this long diagonal. All right, so they go e5. So this is just like an English opening now, I think. And although we play the King's Indian attack type of position, it's always good to be aware of what type of structures you're getting in a position. Simply because, hey, if we get a certain structure, we should be aware of it. Because that can help us come up with ideas, plans, as some may call them, in a position. So after bishop f5, I'm looking at both knight d2 and e4. Does e4 favor me? I feel like it does. But also knight d2 looks good because I'm threatening b7. They could go c6 though, and then why is my knight here? e4, the idea, ooh, that's incredible. e2 takes e5. No, but e4, the idea would be potentially to go for a kingside break with some sort of f4. So I'll play e4. I'll buy into the game that they're playing. And the good thing is it's not really a pure King's Indian defense or attack type of structure because the center is not fully closed. Like, it's not locked. It's closed because all the pawns are on the board. That's what a closed pawn structure would be. But it's a fluid structure. For example, they're still able to play d5, and I'm still able to play d4, which could directly open things up. So playing moves like f5 or f4, of course, I just set them in opposite order. If we play f4 or if they play f5, well, that's still playable. But we have to be a little bit more aware of what might happen as a result. I like h3, but I also don't like h3. h3, the idea is preventing any knight g4s. Or do we go d4 here? I mean, we'd have to start with b3 anyways. So let's play b3. Kind of a funny move. But I'm not opposed to getting some sort of open position. Yeah, so bishop b2. And I'll play rook to d1. Oh, okay, if they're gonna... This is not a good move from them. Because they ruin their structure. And they close things where it just really does not help them. Like, just one example is we have e5 and they do not have d3. We can open our diagonal for our bishop, and they cannot open their diagonal. That's just one of many issues here. First off, this pawn is hard to defend. They have to play something like c5, which again is not desirable here. And we have still f4 and moves like f5 coming, and they are extremely hard to deal with. Now I think we can just take this pawn, and I'm going to take pawns when I can. So let's take on d4 here. If we can take on e6, I'll happily do that as well. So this opening went extremely well for us, even though we kind of went out of the King's Indian attack a little bit, but also not really, because we did play the starting moves, we just played a different structure. So sometimes we have to be okay with that. And I don't think we are upset whatsoever. I'll play h3, just kick the bishop. They might go back to d7 or to c8. Wherein I will play most likely knight e2. If they play bishop back to e6, I'll just take it. and play something like d4. This actually just loses the bishop, I believe. g4. They're hoping for some initiative on this side of the board. Do I allow it? Or do I go f4 instead? So if I go g4 here, knight takes, oh no, bishop takes would probably be played. And then pawn takes. And then knight takes. I have f3, but knight e3. I could also play f3 here. So the thing is, we do win the bishop. But do we win the bishop, or do we go for something where it's like a little more annoying? Like f4. Where all of a sudden, if they go for this knight takes g4 stuff, we can go like queen e2 at the end of the day. Or even, maybe not queen f2, because of course this would be hanging, but just cover our king side a little bit more. This bishop's going to be bad pretty much forever. So it's worth considering. I'm not sure I want to take it. That's how bad this position is. Objectively, g4 is going to be best. And that makes me want to play it, but it also makes me not. Like there's other reasons that make me not want to play it. Yeah, so I'm gonna stick with f4. g4 is always gonna be a threat. Always going to be a threat. I'm just seeing if we can get it under better circumstances, or if they're going to realize that it's stuck and play something like g5 and just really try to like make some uncomfortable moves. Yeah, so after something like g5, we can either take it or push and renew the threat. We do have to ask if g5, f5, g4 can be played. Where maybe we play h4, and well, our pieces do look really good there. So I'm not really concerned. Yeah, I think next move I'll play g4. Alright, c5. And this is what I was hoping for, because now I can move my knight to a better square, like a6, or b5, sorry, not a6. a6 isn't even possible, but now g4 becomes even stronger. Do I just retreat to c3? Okay, it's just on a better square. If the knight moves, I'm just going to move my knight as well. Actually, pretty much no matter what, I'm going to play knight d5 to just neutralize the bishops, make sure there's no, like, what if I play g4? This is something to note. g4, knight takes g4, h takes g4, or no, sorry, g4, bishop takes g4, and then knight takes g4, where all of a sudden, there's queen h4 and bishop d4 check threats. That's scary, and we can prevent that by just playing something like knight d5 first. And the problem is their position is so ill-equipped here that it's playable. And now it's even stronger just to, I think, go here immediately, yeah? g4? Feels like we can do this now. Bishop d4 check isn't as big of a concern because we have king h2. So, king h2 is good. Yeah, so sometimes, again, you can just let the material stay there for a bit. And it can still work out. So bishop d4 check or anything like that followed by queen h4 does not work because we can play king h2 followed by bishop h3. Queen h4 first would have had to been something to consider, but they didn't play it anyways, so no worries there. Let's play knight d5, neutralize this bishop. The second we get these bishops off the board and there's no significant concerns about the d4 square, then looks like we'll be good and we'll be rolling. We're almost playing against 1200s now, which is really cool. It's really exciting. Wondering what they should play here. Bishop takes b2 feels like the inevitable move. I don't think they're happy either way. So what's probably going to happen in this position, my plan, is to exchange the bishops, of course, and then play something like g5 and even knight f6 to exchange further. And after pawn takes f6, okay, we're getting something kind of like that, but a little bit different. This feels better because we have queen c3. Oh, wow. No, this works for them. Do we take with the e-pawn or c-pawn? If we take with c-pawn, we're trying to maintain f5 ideas. If we take with the e-pawn, we can still play f5, but they get the e-file. I don't know how much the e-file matters. I could also play queen b2, which keeps our bishop from a move. That complicates things when we don't need to complicate them. That's the one rule I promised I'd keep. So I'm either going to take or take. So yeah, I'm going to capture. Let's take with the c-pawn and show the value of having an extra piece. Alright, so I'm going to start with g5 here. And then I'm going to play something like queen d2 and f5. E takes was probably better, but I like my chances. Okay, I'll just take once. Do I take again? I could. Yeah, let's just take again. I want to take with the queen so there's no weaknesses. Queen b6 check will be played, but king h2. We get out of it. They can play rook c8. We'll play queen d3. And we're playing rook c1 next to neutralize the c-file. What else do we have to worry about here? I guess maybe they could try something like rook h8, h6. My king could be exposed on h2. It's just not looking like it's gonna go past like one check because, well, we are up a piece and it does cover all the light squares. Like, since we have a light square bishop, our light squares are very well defended, so as long as we're very careful about how we give up the dark squares, I think we'll be okay. So if they try to double up, they could try that, like rook c7, rook c1, rook c8. I think I might just play rook c4 though, because then I'm threatening to double up as well, and if they take, then I just take with the pawn, and it's not a great pawn, but it's still a pawn. We can always play like rook to c1 after, try to go for a c5 break, or even e5 break followed by c5. A lot of these things are in the air. It would be nice to play some sort of e5 soon. But we have to play good chess as well. Do we take it? I think we take it. Now f5 or e5? e5 pawn takes and then f5 is my idea. But also like f5. Trying to open up their king a bit. and argue that their king will be weaker than ours. So, for example, ooh. I almost played queen h3 check, king g7, f6, but there's king g8, and we lose our queen. So instead, we should play f6. Funny looking move. And now we can just play king to g3. Is queen d2 followed by rook h1 winning? I think it is. Our king's a little weird. We have our kings are opposing each other in the center of the board. But again, we're up an extra piece. If they put a bishop on like e5, we'd probably lose, right? But it's just not possible. So because of that, we're winning. So queen d2, king h5, we have bishop f3. If rook f4, we just take it. So this looks like it's winning. And again, we can thank our extra piece, right? Is there anything else to worry about here? Doesn't look like it. Bishop f3 check. Rook g4. And again, our extra piece is actually winning the game for us. After rook g4, bishop g4 is not only checkmate, but it's forking. It's a fork with a checkmate. Or I guess double attack. Fork, generally people say fork when they're talking about a pawn or a knight. Not really a bishop. So are they gonna let the time run out? Maybe they will. That's unfortunate. Yeah. Yeah, good game. 0 mistakes, 0 blunders, 0 missed wins, which I count as a success. Let's check out the opening a little bit. So, yeah, we got our normal setup here. And I played c4 instead of e4. Just because I thought it'd be interesting to try, because the idea of c4 is we're just trying to make sure that our bishop on g2 is the star piece of the game. Whereas when they play e5, well, they're going for a kingside play, right? With moves like potentially f5 coming after that. But yeah, looks like things work out quite well for us. I don't know if e4 was necessary. Turns out it wasn't. It actually was not that great of a move. I didn't hate it, but b4 was slightly more accurate. The idea, I think, is if a5 we have, does bishop a3 work, or supposedly b5 is good too. Which is fair, because if we're both going for kingside attacks, then I do have more space. b3, bishop b2, knight d4, and again, this knight d4 was a huge problem. Felt like their position was fine here. But knight d4 starts to create problems where their structure is just worse than ours. And they probably have to play something like c5. Yeah, c5's only move not to be like dead lost. It's not inspiring though, right? We get the f4 square, we get good control over e5, whereas they don't get to keep control over it. Like if they had a pawn on e5, then this would be different. But because of the position, it's not looking so great. Like knight f4 is suggested. Feels like we're doing quite well here, but our opponent just kind of hangs the pawn, and this is a big deal. So I played h3, kicking the bishop, and bishop h5. Yeah, it turns out g4 is not necessary immediately. Queen d2 is also suggested. F3 is also suggested. I was thinking of f3. I don't think I obviously didn't go for it. But the idea of f3 is just to play g4, where like they have to give up like both pieces or something. Because playing something as dramatic as g4 is just not going to end well for them after something like knight f5, which was my consensus as well. That's why I played f4. Computer still likes it, which makes me happy. So knight b5, a6, knight c3, and after knight d7, I think I finally went for g4. Knight d5 was better, slightly. But I thought enough's enough. Just go for the piece. And what I was expecting here is bishop d4 check and then like queen h4 check. Something like this. But of course this is totally winning for us. We just play something like knight d5 next move. Or even like queen to e2 or queen to g2. Just like defending somehow. Like queen g2 to g3 looks like a really good idea. And looks like it'll just win the game on the spot. h5, queen g3. That's what I would play. Oh, but there's knight takes g4 now. Gotta be careful about that. Takes. We take it. Knight takes h5. And then queen g4? Yeah, queen g4 looks like it works. Yeah. So b5 was played, and then we got to neutralize these bishops too, and there's no bishop on d4. So this just made things so much easier. At the end of the day, c takes might not be necessary. I was thinking of e takes or even queen b2. But I wanted to not play queen b2 because it's like it's complicating things where do we need to complicate things? Do we really need to? Objectively it's best, but again, complications allow the opportunity of mistakes. So that's a big reason why I wanted to just not go for that. Because, you know, then you see that moves like 93 and you never know. But of course, keeping the dark square bishop is really good for us. So c takes d5, g5, c4. Things look good. Looks like we didn't really do anything wrong here. Takes. f5 was actually top move, which is nice. f6 also looks great. Queen d2 check is a forced mate. And of course, rook g4. We have bishop takes g4. Not only checkmate, but also a bishop double attack or a bishop fork, which is nice. It's a good way to end it. And I guess, yeah, there's some just important things to note about the game is maybe if we play c4, don't play e4, because the problem with that is the whole point of c4 is to keep the bishop open. And when we play e4, that's not keeping the bishop open anymore. I'm wondering if knight d2 is even preferred. It's not, because there's knight c6. How should we play this? h3 is suggested. And if e4, we go knight h4? Or knight d4? Knight d4 is slightly better. Knight h4 also looks like it's totally fine. And we just continue developing with something like bishop e3. Yeah, so just maintain development, I guess, is the big lesson there. And be a bit careful about playing c4 and e4 in these positions, which is a good lesson.